Hello everybody and welcome back to another King's War, tournament report. I'm Visibly Riley, and today I thought I'd cover the beginning of the Tacoma Masters Prep event, which I attended this past weekend, January 26th and 27th of 2019 in Lakewood, Washington. Now, as the name might imply, this was a preparation event for the US Masters, which means that we followed the rules that they'll be using there. I think it's in February, so next month. Starting out, we used the Clash of Kings 2018 rules, not the 2019 rules, so some of the lists might be a little confusing. Secondly, it was a 2-day event held over 5 games. Sorry about that. And it was 2250 points. We allowed the Edge of the Abyss, Destiny of Kings, and Historicals to be played. Before 2019, the Edge of the Abyss and Destiny of Kings weren't rolled into the Clash of Kings rule set yet, so you just had to write that down, I guess, in tournaments. We used the Blackjack scoring system, which is an interesting scoring system where it de-incentivizes attrition. It's instead of a +5 -5 difference, it's a +3 -3, so it's very, very difficult to get full attrition points, and it adds more points to how much you win by in your scenario. So instead of going, well, I have 3 objectives and you have 2, so I gain 15 points, instead you have to figure out how much you won by. And you start at 14 for a win, 10 for a draw, 7 for a loss, and then it's adjusted for attrition there. But anyway, next up we used the scenario rules from the Masters list, so we picked from there. We used dot deployment to put out the terrain, which I'll explain that once we get into one of the games. And there was a 70-minute clock, which never ended up being really an issue, but it did cut down on the number of pictures I took, or at least the number of visible pictures I took. There are a lot of blurry thumb pictures in here, so I had to pop those out. Now, let's go into Game 1. So, Game 1, before we start, I did, of course, bring my Ogres, as I don't have that many painted armies for Kings of War, especially if we're going to play 2018. So yeah, I ended up playing against Abyssal Dwarfs for Game 1 with my Ogres. Starting out, here is the deployment. Oh, and the scenario was Pillage, which in the Blackjack system, you always get the maximum amount of loot tokens, or not loot tokens, objectives. So I'm just going to point those out real quick. So we have one in the middle, right there. And then if we go to the left here, we have another objective here. About 12 inches up, we've got another objective there. All the way over here to the right, we have our 4th objective. And then I think that there are 2 objectives somewhere off frame to the left. There might even be one to the right. I'm not really all that clear about where they all were, as there are 7 of them. But pillage is pretty simple. You're just trying to get on the objectives. They're each worth 1 point. There's no real difference between them, but owning more objectives in Blackjack is really important, because it's not just I have 4 and you have 3. If I have 7 and you have 0, I get a very big victory, so I'll get an 18 point and you'll automatically lose 4 of your points. I'll sap them away from you. But if it ends up being a 4-3 victory, I'll get 14 points for winning, but you'll get 7 points for getting for doing well, essentially. So it's not just about winning, it's about how much you win by, which incentivizes a lot of very aggressive play, which is interesting. So to go over the terrain, as I said I would, we used dot deployment, and it doesn't look like there are any pictures here of a dot. Oh, actually right here by my boomers, you can see this little bit of orange. That is a piece of a dot under there, which is basically there are dots under each piece of terrain on the table here, and we take it in turns to place out 1 piece of terrain each. Hills obviously cannot go in deployment zones, but otherwise anything's fair game as long as you fully cover the dot. So the idea here is that you'll end up with varied tables. You can have a bit more control over what's going to happen. So if you're a very shooting focused army, or you're playing against one, you can put, like a big forest in the middle of the table, assuming you have access to one. I mean, we have some forest down here, and I think there's one right here. But yeah, you can choose to put the forest in the middle to protect you a little bit. Or if you're a Pathfinder army, you can slip the difficult terrain right into the middle as well. Or if you're neither of those things, you can try to take the difficult terrain / forest and just push them to the edges, which is what my opponent and I ended up doing, just because neither of us are particularly good about handling terrain, nor are we particularly long range in terms of shooting. I mean, I guess he has a ton of artillery, but that's a little different. So anyway, let's go over his army real quick. I've actually played, this is a regular tournament opponent of mine, who, despite living in a different state, I believe he's from the Portland crowd, I have played in the last 3 or 4 events, I want to say. So we always play, and it's always interesting. This time, starting from left to right, let's start, he has a horde of grotesques right here. I think they had the healing brew. Then next to them, we have, what is that? And the golem, the greater obsidian golem. Yep. Behind him is the overlord. Is that what the wizard is called in Abyssal Dwarfs? That one. It's the wizard. I believe it has the inspiring talisman because in 2018 they didn't inspire anything but elementals. And then behind him we see 2 rockets, and then 2 mortars next to those rockets, and then in front of that artillery train we have 1 regiment, or the 1st regiment of Immortal Guard. I believe that these ones had the Diadem of Dragonkind, so it's pretty good. To the right of them we have a horde of Decimators with elite, yeah, so they've got Blessing of the Gods. Then to the right of them we have 2 more regiments of Immortal Guard. Both of them, or actually just the one on the left here, or my left, has a mutated Throwing Mastiffs, and then the one on the right has Kava's Holy Hand Grenade. Behind them, sneaky, is the little, I think it's called the Slave Driver. It's the ASB in Abyssal Dwarfs, I believe, with the loot of Insatiable Darkness. Then, to the right of that, we have back here a unit of mutated Mastiffs with a Throwing Mastiff themselves. In front of them, a regiment of Slave Orcs. And then finally, off here to the far right, we have another unit of, or I guess it's a regiment of mutated Mastiffs with a Throwing Mastiff. Now, as is my way, I didn't quite get a great... Oh, actually, behind this building in my opponent's deployment, you can see just peeking out right here, that is the 3rd rocket that my opponent brought. So a lot of artillery, a lot of shooting, a lot of good mix here. But yeah, as I commonly do in my reports, I didn't take a picture of the whole table because I'm just that good at it. Off here to the left, I believe there's at least 1 troop of Slave Orc Boar Riders, Gore Riders, I think they're called, over here, and there might be 1 other surprise, but I can't be sure. It's already gone from my brain. As for my Ogre army, it's the one I've played in the last few battle reports. If you want to see what it is, just go back to the last, or the most recent report I played with my Ogres, and that is the one I used. Excuse me. But to go over it real quick, from right to left this time, I have a horde of Hunters with the Brew of Strength. Behind them is a Warlock with Aura of Heroism and Inspiring Talisman. And then to the left of that, we have a horde of Siegebreakers with Caterpillar Potion. Then off here on the left, we have a horde of Boomers with nothing. And then to their left, we have a troop of Red Goblin Scouts. Behind them, an ASB with the Blade of Slashing. And then to the left of that ASB, we have my first Boomer Sergeant. Behind that Boomer Sergeant is a Warlord on Chariot with the Banner of the Griffin. He's also part of the Hell on Wheels formation, so I have some Chariots in this army that are not going to appear in this picture. But yeah, back in 2018, it was a 25-point formation, but it gave them all +1 nerve, which was pretty crazy. So yeah, I definitely brought it this time. And then we have my second horde of Chariots here. Just peeking out off behind that horde is my second Boomer Sergeant. And then behind, off here to the left, off screen, is an ASB with the Diadem of Dragonkind, a second troop of Red Goblin Scouts, and the 2 Chariot hordes. So, or not hordes, 2 Chariot regiments. So I think that's where everything is. The Chariots might actually be this way. Again, it's a little unclear. But anyway, let's start the game. So turn one. Oh, this is actually a much better picture of the armies. But turn one goes to the Abyssal Dwarves, and they... it looks like I got a bad picture of what he did with his turn, but my opponent just looks like he advanced forward a little bit, keeping his lines varied, which is pretty good. Most of his units are obviously outside of my charge range. I think that specifically these Immortal Guard they're both in a height flat piece. Oh, let's actually talk about the terrain real quick. Just jumping around all over the place. This is a better picture to talk about it though. So starting in the bottom right corner, we have a height 6 forest. And then if we go to the north of that, we have a height flat piece of area terrain with a height 1 obstacle attached to it. To the north of that, we have a height 4 impassable. And then to the west, we have a height flat piece of area terrain. To the west of that, we have a height 6 forest, which my opponent has towed all of his artillery into. Not that I'm going to be shooting at him, but he can see most of the table. Then we have to the south, we have a height 2 hill, and then off to the right a little bit, there is another height 2 hill, and I think another height 4 obstacle. Or height 4 impassable piece of terrain, if I'm not mistaken. So my opponent just advanced forward a little bit. You can see this is the Gore Rider troop I was talking about. There are no other surprises, so at least I remember that much. But yeah, so my opponent just advanced forward a little bit. I'm not sure why he advanced the Gore Rider so far forward, because on the left side of the field, you know, all my boomers are over here, so I don't have to advance that far. I can just delete them without really trying. I can also start dodging his artillery, which is all sort of, you know, at best facing this, and he's got these mortars, but if he wants to fire mortars at boomer surgeons, whatever, who cares? So I'm not really so sure about that. But anyway, you can see that it looks like I split my chariots up. So yeah, that was a small confusion by me. One regiment of chariots here on the left and one on the right. I think the idea was that I couldn't fit both of them around any piece of terrain on the right where I wanted to place them, and I ended up placing one on the left, and I wanted the boomers to be protected by this hill from his artillery, as the chariots are height 3, so he'd be able to shoot at them anyway, and I don't gain cover from indirect fire, so not the best plan. And I think that this left chariot unit was deployed last to counter deploy his grotesques. Just to give them a little scare. I don't think my chariots only have 12 attacks, so they're unlikely to be able to do to alpha strike grotesques off the table. But a lot of people overestimate what a regiment of chariots can do, because it kind of looks like a horde of large cav, right? So yeah, anyway, that's what I did. And you can see this is the bottom of turn 1 for the ogres, or the start of turn 1 for the ogres, after the Chaos Dwarfs have moved forward. With his shooting, it looks like he did 6 wounds to the boomers in the middle with his rockets, which was pretty good. I believe he hit with all 3 of his rockets this turn, but I think only 1 from each one, and then there were 2 from each one actually, but they didn't roll very high on the number of shots, because you can see these boomers, or this unit of siege breakers, also took a wound from some rockets. So, you know, it happens. Artillery hits or doesn't. Thankfully, both of his mortars missed this turn, so that is great for me. But with the ogre turn, I decided to advance most of my army. I don't go too far forward because, again, on my left flank, I don't want to advance into the grotesques or the obsidian golem being able to charge me, and I pretty much just want to shoot these gore riders off the table real quick, just to make sure that he's playing down a unit, and I don't advance into his short-range shooting with my short-range shooting. So that's the plan. On the right, I advance my units towards the piece of rough terrain, as I have Pathfinder and he does not, although there is an obstacle attached to it, so it's not that great. But anyway. And lastly, the chariots, yeah, they just sort of advance forward a little bit to you know, start doing the chariot dance, as I do have a 16-inch charge, which is, you know, significant. Really threatening my opponent, keeping him away from the side of the table. Oh, I think I have I have something over here. I don't really remember what it is. Oh, I think the diadem, yeah, the diadem ASB is over here off frame to the right, along with a troop of Red Goblin Scouts. So that's where they are. You can see so I advance forward, and I end up getting a little cheeky charge here, because if you look here on the left, my opponent, I had my Red Goblin Scouts right about here, or maybe directly behind the hill, but since he's height 3 and I'm speed, I can charge 20, I just went into him. Keeping the grotesques off me for another turn seemed very prudent. So yeah, Red Goblin Scouts doing what they do. I would have loved to hunt artillery, but my opponent wisely decided to deploy very strong in the artillery front, as ogres can be seen over it. I don't gain cover, and it's really hard for me to work around the entire table, right, with this many throwing mastiffs and such. So yeah, I just go into his grotesques, holding them up, hoping to hold them up for a turn. I guess I will automatically hold them up for a turn, but because they're not nimble. And so yeah, there's that charge. As you might expect, the goblins don't do a whole lot here, but they could have. I guess I could have got a boxcar. And here is the end of turn 1. You can see that his gore riders are gone, which is good for me. It would have been really sad if I had had a horde of boomers, two boomer sergeants fail to kill that guy. Yeah, that would have been sad indeed. On the right, this die right here is out just because I couldn't find my the golden die I used to mark Aura of Heroism. So I ended up succeeding with only one of my casts, and I get Rally 1 onto my hunters, which is giving +1 nerve in a little radiant around there, which I found probably important. And we move forward to turn 2. So turn 2 for the Abyssal Dwarfs. Again, they're not really ready to engage me yet. His slave orcs, I think, had a charge onto my chariots, but they would have been going through the rough terrain into Def 5 units, and since slave orcs in 2018 only have a melee of 5+, with no crushing, that doesn't seem great. So they do have vicious, so that's good. Yeah, my opponent is cautiously advancing. He is a shooting army, so that makes a lot of sense. The orcs, again in the middle here, on the middle right, I guess, are pretty much chapping up my entire line here, as my siege breakers are in the front, the hunters are in the back, and the siege breakers only have a 10-inch charge, right? The chariots can't get around this this unit of orcs, and the dogs are parked with their front touching the orcs, making it so none of my units can actually succeed at this charge, as we're all in its front arc. So, or its front arf. That was terrible, but yeah, so I can't really charge this unit. I mean, I can charge the orcs, but who really cares about that? Seems good. Over here on the right is a battle that you can't really see. His dogs move forward. I have a unit of what are they? Red Goblin Scouts hiding behind an obstacle. Dogs don't care about that too much, but yeah, he's just getting ready to throw some mutated mastiffs at me. I do also have my ASB right about here, as I anticipated that, and the idea is that he can shoot at my dogs. It's unlikely to do too much to them, as I am Def 4. And then I am inspired for the reroll. I have +1 nerve because of the hunters right now, and then I can just move forward with the ASB and burn these dogs down, as they are Def 2, so the diadem is pretty much perfect to fight dogs. On the left, my opponent decides to go back in with his grotesque, go into my Red Goblin Scouts, hoping to one-round them, which they probably will. And then the rest of his army just doesn't advance, because there's no reason to. He has me outgunned with all this artillery. I'm not really putting that much pressure on him, because my speed elements, I put one, again, on the left here, and I think that probably was a mistake. I think these guys should be more central and just let the grotesques do whatever they're gonna do. But yeah, that's what I did. So yeah, I'm not putting that much pressure on him yet, and he has so much range that it's gonna get a little ugly. And here is this charge. Yeah, goodbye goblins, we knew you well. And here is the shooting. So he has the he can shoot at my Red Goblin Scouts, but instead decides to shoot at my ASB, and I'm like, I'm not sure that's a great idea. An Ogre ASB is Def 5. But yeah, he shoots at me and does 7 wounds, which is pretty nuts. Those dogs, there's 6 shots, they hit on a 4+, they wound on a 4+, they wound on a 5+. They reroll all failed wounds, and then every wound that they do turns into another attack, and you keep going until you run out, right? But 7 is significantly above average. That is, oof, that is rough. And none of this was mortars or anything. This is just that one unit of mutated mastiffs, right? Hunting mastiffs thrown at me. So, you know, on average, they do like 2 wounds. Like 2 or 3 wounds, so that is ugly. And yeah, the same thing happens here, where my opponent throws dogs at me. No, this is not dogs. I think that this is the rockets. So we've got 1 rocket here and 2 up here in the woods. They all shoot, and they also roll very well. So he did 6 wounds to me turn 1. He just did another 8 wounds to me. Yeah, that's... No, I am wrong. Yeah, he fired the rockets, but yeah, this is more dogs. 1 dog, if I remember correctly at the end of this, did 7 of those wounds, where he just had 1 die. So he was like 4+ to hit, 4+ to wound, 4+ to hit ad nauseum, right? And yeah, just really strong dice. Not a lot you can do about it. And here's what the end of the round looks like. I will point out some other wounds that happened. So yeah. This ASB ends up getting wavered because those dogs roll insanely well, which really sucks as it screws up my plan. I guess I could have angled the Red Goblin Scouts a little better, but I wanted to be able to charge around in case he tried to get cheeky with these dogs, because I just wasn't expecting, you know, 7 wounds on a Def 5 unit. So that's unfortunate. I end up taking 3 wounds on this chariot, and that's because one of these rockets hits. You know, he hits with a lot of the rockets, but they're not getting a great spread on their D3, which I guess is a saving grace, as the rest of the dice have been pretty good so far. The Siege Breakers do not get shot at again, I don't think, but my Warlord on Chariot does get shot at by, I think, yes, this rocket battery, the one I was mistakenly saying shot at my boomers for a second there. It actually shot at my Warlord, and hits, does 2 wounds to me. So, again, it's pretty good shooting there, Tex. And of course the Red Goblin Scouts get mutilated by those grotesques. But yeah, at least they're not dogs, I guess, because they probably would have wiped out this entire flank for no reason. But anyway, moving on to turn 2 for the ogre, turn 3. It looks like I didn't get a turn 2 picture of my ogres, but turn 3 for the ogres. Looks like this. Oh, maybe did I just skip my turn? I'm not sure. There might have just been some missing pictures here, but anyway, moving on. I have my chariots and this little unit here. That is my horde of hunters decide to go into the slave orcs. I don't need the siege breakers to do it, so they just walk behind this barrier. Granted, it's not gonna, you know, if I charge over it, I'm gonna be -1 to hit because Pathfinder doesn't turn off obstacles, but it's still better than projecting no threat towards the center. My ASB with the Blade of Slashing hides behind this hill a little bit because I decide at this point that I really need to be grabbing planning for the tokens. He's rolling too well for me to outdamage him. I'm down 1 unit. I got a wavered ASB who's probably he's probably not going to kill those dogs now, or at least it's going to take him 2 turns. And yeah, it's not going great. So instead, I shift focus to just grab the tokens and not try to outdamage him. Because I don't think it's really possible right now. So yeah, and then on the left, I back my chariots up, and that's because they were in charge range of the grotesques, and the chariots just cannot take grotesques. That'll go poorly. I guess I could have pushed forward with them to bait him into a charge and then charge him myself with my other units, but he just has so much artillery that I don't know what's going to happen, right? It's sort of the problem with the artillery is that I can't go, well, I'll just move my chariots here and then, you know, I'll have boomers or boomer sergeant or whatever countercharge, because then the artillery hits one of these guys, like 1 mortar hits. That's what, d6 + 4 pierce 3 or pierce 4 attacks, right? And, you know, that's a recipe for losing my boomers and then not being able to actually kill the grotesques, and then I would have traded 2 for 0. So a little pessimistic, but you know, it's just what happens when you're down units in a very elite army like ogres. or at least the ogre army I'm running. So yeah, I back up a little bit, although I do move my boomer sergeants forward to get some shots onto the grotesques. This boomer sergeant bravely just gets in the way. I am trying to bait some charges, right? Like I really want something to come over here so I can start punching it with ogres, but not everything, or at least I don't want everything into my real units, right? So trying to bait them over here. And that's about it. Yeah, it's still playing very tentatively, playing back a lot. On the right off frame here, my ASB is backed up out of range, or out of charge range of the dogs, which is pretty important, as throwing mastiffs are thankfully only one use, because they would have probably eaten my entire family if I had let him throw again. But yeah, so I back off a little bit, and then next turn I plan to just walk forward and flame. So anyway, this is the one combat. Hopefully it's a pretty easy one. I do have a disrupted charge with my chariots, but that's not that big of a deal. They still wound on, I think they wound these orcs on 3s because they're def 5. But yeah, the hunters alone should be able to put these guys at a low nerve. So anyway, here is the end of the turn. You can see my hunters and chariots did manage to kill off the orcs. My warlock has again cast Aura of Heroism onto the hunters, giving them +2, so that's good. And the rest of the army just, yeah, sort of sits around. And we move on to dwarf. Oh, okay, this is dwarf turn 3. I just, that die got all messed up in the picture flow. So yeah, turn 3 for the dwarves. Finally, they're moving forward because the ogres have placed slight amounts of pressure on him. So the dogs charge into my hunters. I think the idea here is that because of this wall, because of the positioning of it, my hunters will still be disordered if they charge the dogs, because of how that works. And I don't have enough space to fit through this gap to charge anything else, because I don't really want to charge dogs with hunters. And currently they're blocking up my chariots as well, because while I just can't swing through this gap, right? It's too small for the chariots to fit, right? Because I could swing up and then turn, hit the corner, and not really fit. Doesn't, oh, that's a great picture, but I won't be able to fit. So pretty good move by my opponent. And the rest of the army, you know, it meanders forward. It's not really important for him to go too much forward right now. Oh, you can see my boomer sergeants do not manage to kill off the grotesques. I didn't expect them to. I just wanted to do a bit of damage, even with their regen. I needed something to start going. So yeah, we go there. With my opponent shooting, he ends up doing 5 wounds to this boomer sergeant and getting a waiver on him, which is super unfortunate, as that boomer sergeant, I have a rally 2 around him, putting him on a 13-15, and I still got wavered. So unfortunate. But the rest of the shooting looks like it wasn't too effective. My warlord, I know, was shot with many, both the mortars have been shooting at my warlord. Thankfully the mortars have not hit yet, so I've got that going for me. And it looks like the rockets also missed, or at least the one rocket that's likely to have gone, or no, that rocket probably fired at this boomer sergeant, but I know at least one of these rockets also fired at him and missed. So I've got that going for me. I believe these 5 wounds were actually caused by the diadem, maybe? But yeah, it's pretty bad. And we move forward to the combat. This guy ends up taking 3 wounds from his golem. And in reverse of the other one, this guy is not even inspired. So yeah, I'm an 11-13, and he can't roll the 8 here to get a waiver. So thankfully this guy's ready to rock. And moving forward, we see the end of turn 3 for the Chaos Dwarves. He hasn't done too many wounds elsewhere, so I guess I've got that going for me, but I'm definitely playing on the back foot right now, just due to some slight luck, but I mean, that's just what, you know, that's what spiky damage like mortars do, right? They hit or they don't. So I'm being pressured a little bit right now by how much damage he's managed to do in the first 2 turns, or first 3 turns, I guess now. So yeah, moving forward to turn 3 for the ogres, and we finally get some charges in, or some real charges, not goblins and boomer sergeants. So speaking of a Boomer Sergeant, this Boomer Sergeant who is fighting the Golem here decides to just corkscrew charge into these Immortal Guard who have the Diadem of Dragonkind. I need to make sure that they're not shooting, and also I just don't want this Boomer Sergeant over here, and I'd prefer him doing something rather than nothing. Because I'm just going to charge in with 1 regiment of chariots and my boomers into his obsidian golem. It is a -17, and it is inspired by this wizard back here, but still I've got 12 attacks that hit on 3s, wound on 3s because of Thunder 2 Crush 1 from the chariots, and then I have 18 attacks on 4s and 5s. So I'm hoping to get a I mean, I'm not gonna lie, that's a pretty lucky kill, but you know, I'm hoping to get a kill there that would really put things back into order for the ogres, really start putting the pressure on this left flank, as the center is looking like it's going to be a little drawn out for me. But yeah, speaking of the center, I do take the charge with my hunters and the chariots into his dogs, and my siege breakers have a charge into these Immortal Guard. And the idea here is that when I slide over, it wasn't looking, so I don't slide far enough due to the dogs because of what we were talking before. I can't, he wanted to make sure nothing could fit in there, right? So because of that, I actually can't slide over far enough to give these Immortal Guard my flank when I charge. So I went, nah, siege breakers are, you know, they're built to take a hit. I can probably take 2 units of Immortal Guard, and if he does that, he also can't shoot at me. So it's a calculated risk, but I think it works out. Now, I do make an error here, which is my Warlock is sitting in the rough terrain, hiding behind my hunters, that's not the error. The error is that I could have moved the Warlock forward more to get the siege breakers into inspiring. So that wasn't my best move. Or I could have run forward with this ASB, right, and just run over here, stayed out of their charge arc, and given the inspire there, but I don't do that either. So small mistakes, but they do add up. This little what is it? The Boomer Sergeant backs up again, hiding behind this hill. So I think I just nimble pivot and back up my 3 to hide from all these mortars, which is I feel like it doesn't feel good, but I do think that, especially given what the mission is, I should have just taken all my ogres, put them behind taken the hills, put them in the middle of the table, right? One goes here, one goes here, assuming my opponent lets me, but I think that I placed the first piece of terrain. No, he did, and he placed one of these here, I think. Anyway, I should have placed the forest or the hill or whatever in the middle, right? And the same thing here, and just run my army up and hidden behind it and gone, you come over here, I'm gonna go grab objectives because I am faster than he is. So it just doesn't feel good. I don't like doing it. Anyway, the last charge is that my goblins decide, well, we have a pretty good charge because I can get into his ASB. So the goblins have 7 attacks. He, I think, is an 11-13 to break, maybe a 10-12 with Dev 5, right? So it's 4s and 4s, but it's not the worst. And if I can kill him, it's an easy 2-inch overrun into the flank of these Immortal Guard. And I think with the Red Goblins and the Siege Breakers, I can get rid of these Immortal Guard in one go. So it does require a bit of luck, but I don't think it's that unlikely. And I'll probably at least waiver that ASB, which could be good in the future. As again, I do think he has the Delude of Insatiable Darkness, and I definitely don't want my opponent to have any more crushing. So yeah, that's the plan. And and then lastly, over here on the right, again off screen, is my ASB moving back up to his previous spot, right about here on the barrier, and doing the Diadem of Dragonkind into the dogs that have backed up. So here is the first combat with the Siege Breakers. Gives you a nice shot of Dustin's army, or his Immortal Guard. And right here gives you a nice shot of my empty base, because Yetis are metal and don't work with this. Man, actually both of us were trying to get onto these pieces of area terrain, and these were so slick that, like, I was putting proxy bases on him, right? Like these MDF rectangles, and they would just slide right off, like they were just so slick on top. So interesting. This is the end of the combat with the dogs. I forgot to take a picture of it, of me fighting them, but yeah, I easily kill them off and overrun. But unfortunately, that's not what happens with the ASB. My goblins go in and, you know, they do standard goblin stuff. So they do 1 wound, and yeah, they don't even waver him. So he's still ready to rock, although he can't shoot. And you can see, I think this 9 is the Siege Breakers, but we'll see. My Boomer Sergeant is in the Immortal Guard. I don't expect much. I'm just hoping for 1 wound. I don't really care about anything else. And here is the end of the round. So yeah, this 9 is in fact on the Immortal Guard from my Siege Breakers. With Brutal, that brings me to 10, and I think they are a -17. So I need a 7 twice, and I don't get it. I don't even think I get a 7 once. But you know, that's just what happens. And it's not that bad. Like I said, I can probably take 2 Immortal Guard to the front, but I definitely should have been inspired. That was a big mistake by me. Over here on the left is pretty unfortunate though. Not only do I not kill off this golem, I actually do like 10 or 11 wounds to him and don't kill him. So it just feels bad. Feels bad, man. Especially as these grotesques have their choice of target here that they can go into. In better news, my little guy here that could, the Boomer Sergeant, does do the 1 wound, the requisite 1 wound I needed, and manages to disrupt this unit. I do get a bit of luck as well with my Diadem, only hitting twice on the dogs, doing 2 wounds. I think he does wound both times, but rolls insanely well for the break test, and because I think they're a 11-13, and boxcars them off the table. So, so at least I've got that going for me. That's pretty cool. And we move on to turn 4. Turn 4, Abyssal Dwarves. You can see the grotesques go into my chariots, and my opponent actually wanted to double charge with his obsidian golem, but after he measured where the obsidian golem would be, we found that there wasn't actually enough room. So instead he just does this little double charge here, well, quote, double charge, but the grotesques go into my chariots. That one's interesting, as I think grotesques are the 24 attacks on 4s with Crush 2. So they've got 24, that's 12-ish hits on average, and then with the 3+, you know, it's got 9 wounds, but I am a 16-18. So due to the Hell on Wheels formation and the Rally 2 from my Warlord, so I'm not sure he can get me, and if he even rolls a little unlucky, which a 4+ to hit unit, you know, that's what they want to do, I could just easily absorb that charge and be able to do this. Speaking of that, the Obsidian Golem does go into my Boomers. I don't think he'll be able to do anything there, again, because they are a 17-19 due to the Rally 2, but it is still unfortunate for me. Now, and this is another thing that is a little sad, is that because I failed to kill the Obsidian Golem with those 2 units, I also end up in an exactly straight line, so no corkscrew charging for me. But yeah, the Immortal Guard here go into my, that is the best drawing. The Immortal Guard here go into my Boomer Sergeant, get that counter charge going. The Decimators move over here to decimate my goblins. They'll actually do more than decimate them. And after a lot of deliberation, my opponent just goes, you know what, I don't need to shoot the goblins. I'll instead, he can shoot at my hunters, right? It's a 5+ because I have cover due to the Siege Breakers, but he just goes, nah, my ASB with 1 attack on a 5+, I'll at least get in the way, right? I've only done 1 wound, and if he does 1 wound to me, it'll turn off my Thunderous and make that very difficult. And since I am not I'm not able to corkscrew with these troops due to their size, it blocks me from being able to charge goblins into the Decimators to turn off their shooting. So that's the idea there. And I think that's about it. And here we see the 1 combat. My opponent just sends 1 unit of Immortal Guard into me. And I think this was smart because Two definitely, or it's not definitely, but they're unlikely to be able to do much to these guys. He just needs to have one and then hold me back for one turn that way and then a second turn, because if he ends up charging them both, he'll end up with the same problem that I had on the left flank, which is he'll be in a straight line, and I have my hunters here. So I think this was a great move. And those guys already have 9 wounds on them, so they're probably going to die anyway. Over here, yeah, just showing off these charges and that one. And yeah, that guy is doomed. And here is the end of the turn, and wow, that was bad. So yeah, the decimators shoot into my hunters, and with cover, I think they have 20 shots. I want to say 20 or 25 shots. He does like 14 wounds to me. So yeah, it was ludicrous. I mean, I just can't stop that kind of shooting. Very unfortunate for me. So yeah, he does a ton of wounds there. His ASB does 1 hit, 1 wound, and rolls an 11, kills my goblins. So they're gone. And then over here, you'll notice that my warlord on chariot is missing. That is because the mortars hit this turn, and 1 mortar hits, does 9 wounds to me. And I am also a 16-18, not just kills him off with double 10s. So I lose an insane amount of my army here. And it really just, I don't know. I'm not super against playing against artillery like this, but in terms of like, I don't think it's boring to play against. I think it's fine. You know, it's not something to get particularly hurt about. My problem with it is what I have to do to play, in my opinion, correctly against it is hide, and I don't want to do that. So that is the only part I really don't like, is that as the opponent of it, I should have just taken my entire army and hidden behind the forest, right? Like deployed them out here, you know, been like, there's forest in the middle of the table and hills over here, and then place all the objectives behind them and run over there. Like, that's just not fun. But anyway, so yeah, this is a devastating turn. But at least over here on the left in the combats, my opponent just does pretty poorly. The Obsidian Golem doesn't do too poorly. He does 5 wounds to my boomers, but does not manage to waver them. And the Grotesques just, I don't know what happened, but they only did 2 wounds to my chariot regiment. So at least with their warlord gone, they didn't get trashed. So there is, you know, there's still hope. It's not done yet. And we move on to Ogre turn 4. So Ogre turn 4 goes in the way that you might expect it, which is all the ogres charge. So on the left, you can see my chariots and boomers go back into they countercharge their respective opponents. So I get into the Grotesques and the Obsidian Golem. The Obsidian Golem was healed by this guy back here, but I think he only healed for 2, so he should be at 8 wounds, I want to say. Yeah, like 8 or 9 wounds. I think it's 8. I think I did 10 to him. So yeah, he's got 8 there. These guys overran a mighty 6, so that's always fun to see with dwarves, making them go, you know, it's like, I get a double turn because of, you know, how slow they are. So yeah, he's got that. The Immortal Guard here, now, I think this was a mild misplay by my opponent, which is he moved him into charge range of this ASB, but I guess it does tempt me into taking this charge. So yeah, I guess it's not that bad of an idea. And unfortunately, yeah, those hunters taking that insane amount of damage really ruins my entire strategy here, which is I was going to take the siege breakers, and because I can corkscrew with them. Oh no, I could not corkscrew. Right, it wouldn't have worked there. But the hunters could have fit through and charged here, I think. Maybe they couldn't, but I definitely wanted them up. Oh, right, I know what it was. I wanted a combo charge because I wanted the siege breakers to be here, right? Or, you know, more to my left. So send the hunters in here, siege breakers there, and then the chariots there. So that was the plan, but at least I've got this going for me, which is the chariots had a charge into his ASB. I think this angling is a little wrong, but let's roll back. Nope, it's correct. That is the minimum angle I could get into his ASB with. So if I kill that guy and get an overrun, I'll actually hit these guys in the flank, but I don't think I need to. They're already sitting on 9 wounds and are fighting unhindered siege breakers, so probably not great for them. My Warlock just gets into the terrain. He's currently hidden from almost all the shooting, right? So this building is hiding him from the rocket, and then all the things in the woods have to kill off the siege breakers and the chariots before they're going to be able to see this guy. So that's the idea there. So yeah, I get the flank here. I only have 6 attacks, so this might have been a mistake, but I need to do something. I need to bring something over here to threaten these decimators, and at the end of the day, I just can't expect the artillery to keep hitting and expect to win. So I have to do something, right? Otherwise it's just losing slowly. So I do that, and yeah, so getting into this guy, into the Immortals, into the Immortals, that, and here is the end of the round. Not pictured here isn't my ASB is actually hiding. There's a hill that if you remember, the dogs were on. This hill will never appear again, but the dogs were on a hill. I am hiding over by it from all the artillery because there is an objective over there that I want to nab without my opponent being able to do anything about it. So I do that. And at the end of the turn, yeah, you can see that my chariots and the siege breakers easily kill off both the ASB and the Immortals, while this ASB does 0 wounds. So, yeah, that was just kind of funny. But, I guess not great, but funny. And then they reform forward. It looks like my chariots, it might look like I've given the decimators my flank. I have not. It's not a flank charge, but they'll probably just shoot at me anyway, since I don't think they have crushing, but they do have piercing 1. Now, this is very unfortunate. So I had this abyssal, or this, I'm going to keep calling him that, this obsidian golem on 8 wounds, and I charge in with my boomers, so 4s and 4s, and I do nothing. So, yeah, there's that. So I don't kill this thing, and I'm now going to get flank charged by Obsidian, or, yeah, Obsidian Guard? Immortal Guard, so, you know, it just gets worse. My chariots bounce off of the grotesques. That was expected. The grotesques have regened a few wounds, and my chariots are only sitting on crush 1 versus them, so I didn't expect much out of that. But yeah, not killing off that golem is going to be bad. I do move forward with my Boomer Sergeant to shoot into these guys. They do have a Diadem of Dragonkind, but I just needed to do something. And if I had been able to kill off this golem, I could have backed up a little bit more and protected my guy from being able to be shot anyway. So that was the plan. And we move on to turn 5. So turn 5 looks like this. It's pretty brutal. You can see, yeah, his guard go into the flank of my boomers, and the front, he gets the golem. Yeah, you can see right there, I only did 1 wound. So, and that's pretty bad for them. The grotesques go back into the chariots. Hopefully they'll do 2 more wounds, and that equates to nothing. He moves forward with the fireball guy, or whatever this wizard is called. I think he has fireball 6 as well, because they come with it, to just shoot at this ASB, because he doesn't see a reason to countercharge as he's trying to block the siege breakers from getting to the decimators, which seems smart. The decimators back up a little bit to shoot at my chariots, who it might look like they're in cover, but they are not. They are not 50% in that, and since they're height 3, they do not benefit from being shot through it. So yeah, no cover for them, no cover for old chariots. And here, yep, just showing off the combats, and here's what the end of the round looks like, which, it's very unfortunate for the ogres, but not unexpected, which is, on the left here, you can see the chariots and the boomers are gone. That's what looks like it's going to happen. His Immortal Guard reface to go after the Boomer Sergeant. The grotesques just turn towards the middle, and the golem here turns to look at the center of the table, decides to just chance the flank charge from the Boomer Sergeant. Especially, it was a weird thing. A lot of people thought that the Boomer Sergeant has 8 attacks because he has Breath 8. You know, it makes sense, but I'm like, well, why do you think this guy would have 8 attacks? Like, you would see 3 in every army. That'd be insane, right? Like, he's got 8 attacks, Breath 8, costs 95 points, and Crush 1 hits on a 4+. That would be too good. And I would never shoot with him. I would just run around punching. It's more attacks than my Warlord has. So, yeah, funny. At least for me. At least this fireball doesn't just remove my ASB, as I was thinking he's just going to one-turn him. So that was unfortunate. I don't think the mortars hit, because I think they just hit that one time so far in the game. But the rockets definitely hit. They at least one rocket from every battery except for this one has hit every turn, and they go into the chariots to help the decimators finish them off. That's not, that's not unexpected, but a little, a little problem is that my siege breakers take a few more wounds from one of the spare rockets after the chariots get to double ones, so that is bad. But at least they're not wavered, so I'll take it. You can see that I did do an Aura of Heroism onto my siege breakers here to try to help the chariots. Every little bit helps, especially as the lightning bolt is terrible on those things. But anyway, here is the end of 5 for the ogres, or the start of 5, I guess, for the ogres, which is I go into the front of the remaining immortal guard in the center with my siege breakers. I charge into the decimator's flank with my ASB. That just had to be done. I'm hoping to get a waiver, just a really lucky waiver, but I need to make it so they can't shoot, as they only hit on a 5+ in melee. So that's the plan there. My Boomer Sergeant does go into the Greater Obsidian Golem. He doesn't have anything else to do, since these guys have a shooting attack and this guy can surge. Hiding over behind this hill isn't great, because I'm not even sure if I could. I might be able to like run to this side and be able to hide from the nope, they're height 3, so there was no hiding. So yeah, I just go into the Greater Obsidian Golem, hoping to finish it off in one go, even though Horde of Boomers couldn't. But let's see here, what else happens? Oh yeah, the ASB continues to hide in the corner, so that's good. And my Warlock finally emerges, so I'm still hidden from line of sight from this mortar by the, rocket battery by the house, but the other full artillery can shoot at me, except for, I don't know if either of the mortars can. I don't think they have any shot on him, but yeah, I do move forward. I need to make sure that my siege breakers are inspired, so we're doing that. Probably gonna throw a lightning bolt real quick, as these guys are injured, so I could get lucky, eventually, and kill them off. But yeah, just showing out that combat. And oh, actually, you might, this is the warrior horde I painted up for a tournament last summer, and I do have siege breakers that are all converted and they look cool, but they take forever to make. They are completely green stuff. All those executioner style guys you might have seen before on the channel that I run as siege breakers, they just take too long, and I only have 4 of them, and yeah, I just didn't want to make any more. And I really don't like minimum model count, he says, using 2 chariots in his hordes, or his regiments, but that was a time constraint, not a conscious choice. But anyway, that's why I brought these guys. Showing off that charge, and this one, hoping to get lucky. Not even too lucky, as I do have 8 attacks, so 8 attacks on 4s and 5s, and that thing is sitting on 9 wounds already, and I have brutal, so not that lucky, I guess. And here is the end of the combat. Thankfully, I do get lucky on the left here, as I only do 1 wound. You can see here it's got 10, but brutal saves me, and then my overrun is a raw 6, so I also dodge the Grotesque's countercharge. So I am well hidden, except for the diadem. So I do lightning bolt these guys. I think I miss with all my shots, I want to say. And then my siege breakers go into the immortal guard, and oof, I don't know what I thought about sending the ASB in as well, because he had a flank, but I went, well, siege breakers probably have it, and if they don't, I have to make sure that the decimators go down. But unfortunately, the siege breakers don't even kill the immortal guard, so yeah, that's unfortunate. I think I've said unfortunate enough times. And we move on to turn 6, which I forgot to take a picture of the die, or maybe it'll turn up later. But turn 6 for the Chaos Dwarves, or not Chaos Dwarves, wow, Abyssal Dwarves. You can see things just sort of turn around. The Grotesque turn to face the center of the table, just in case something weird happens, and there's a turn 7. The Immortal Guard, I think that they are facing... No, I think they're facing this way. They just backed over here. Yeah, so they're already within 3 of this objective, and are getting ready to burn this guy down. Seems good. He's also got like 80 mortars at him. But yeah, there's a counter charge from the decimators into my ASB. That's not unexpected. And a counter charge? Yeah, there must be a charge. No, yeah, he doesn't charge me with the Immortal Guard, which is smart because he has all the artillery, and they only have one target, well, besides the Boomer Sergeant, to really shoot at, and it is these Siege Breakers. And since he has no crushing strength and no ability to gain crushing strength with these guys, why would he ever charge into the front of Siege Breakers? So, smart move by my opponent. Yeah, the only combat this turn, and yeah, there's the turn 6. I knew it would be somewhere. And here is the end of Abyssal Dwarf turn 6. You can see, or actually this is the start of Dwarf turn, or Dwarf, oh man, I'm out of it. Ogre turn 6. You can see what happens. His decimators do not decimate this ASB. They only do 2 wounds to him, so that feels very nice. But the Boomer Sergeant just gets destroyed. I think that the diadem alone does it, while all the kings shooting here can only put 1 wound onto my Siege Breakers, and that's all that I need. And he doesn't get the lucky waiver there. So I move all my units around. Oh yeah, I move all my units around. My Warlock runs over to the objective here, just to grab it. Hoping, I guess it's not hoping. I'm not even sure the Immortal Guard are within 3, but if the Siege Breakers walk right through them, that'd be great. As with my overrun, if they are within 3, the Siege Breakers would then be... No, they're going to back up. Okay, sorry. Yeah, the Warlock goes over to this objective. The Siege Breakers go to kill the Immortal Guard, and then they plan to back up to this objective, and then I have the objective over here on lockdown, because I can't be seen by anything except for the Grotesques, who are, I mean, besides this a little bit and maybe another, 6 inches on the right here, we are on the complete opposite sides of the table from each other. So, yeah, I have one objective over here, and here is the, we can see the end of the turn. Oh yeah, I do charge into the decimators because how dare they? How dare they fight me? Hopefully I can kill this almost dead unit of Immortals. Oh, and yeah, unfortunately that is the last picture I have access to. So if I roll a couple pictures back, it looks like I didn't take an end of game shot, but yeah, I do end up killing off this unit of Immortals. I don't do anything to the decimators at all, and that's about it. I think I went for a... Did I go for it? No, yeah, I just went over there. I had to run, so yeah, I get that one, and I do back up onto this objective. So I have 1, 2, and then 3 hidden over there, while my opponent has 1, 2, and then there's a third one, yeah, right here, third one on the decimators. So yeah, it ends up being a 3-3 draw, as we roll off for turn 7. Actually, I rolled the first time, and my opponent was a little confused, thinking it was turn 5, and in that confusion, I was like, I don't remember what I rolled, so I just let him roll it, and he rolls a 3, the game ends, and it ends up a draw, although with the attrition difference, my opponent gets a +1, because I think he had like 200 more points? Whatever it's 251, I want to say. He had enough points over me in terms of kill to get those points. So yeah, a pretty interesting game 1, definitely a tough fight, and unfortunately I think that a lot of I made a lot of mistakes in this game just in play, but I do that anyway. But I think the only thing that I thought of while playing, like while setting the table up to combat this army, would have made just for the worst game. I would have been so bored. So yeah, it's a little unfortunate because of that, but I think it was a great game. I enjoy playing Dustin. We play in every event, so very fun. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I hope to see you next time. Bye.